views to that of some of my senior colleagues, about 360. But for me, emotional intelligence is just a lens through which staff members, as well as I as leader, can reflect on how we manage our relationships with colleagues and stakeholders. This does not mean that we cannot challenge one another or the status quo, but challenge does not mean that we seek to demoralize or denigrate someone in a Twitter-like fashion because we have a different perspective, identity, or look. So back to my mates at Mayfair. Now let's reflect on the signals and how they made me feel. Unwelcome, like I don't belong. If I had a query, I certainly wouldn't ask that guy for a question, response or help. Now let's overlay my Mayfair experience to our library environments. Are we sending signals that pull our staff and stakeholders closer to us or push them away? Now, I firmly believe that the signals and the cultures are set from the top. So how approachable am I as a leader? Do staff feel that they can share ideas or opinions with me, even if they do not align with my own? Do I take the time to speak with students or staff? If the answer is yes, then staff members can feel it's safe to do so with one another and our stakeholders. And where inevitably differences of approach and opinion arise, staff can draw on their emotional intelligence for self-awareness and self-management, knowing it's okay to agree to disagree without fear of negative consequences like getting thrown out of a shop or being made to feel unwelcome in a library. Now, Mind Tools, I don't expect you to be able to read this, but I just wanted to show you that if you go onto Mind Tools, they provide a free assessment for emotional intelligence. So I thought that we'd have a bit of fun with this, just to take a break from me sort of speaking. And these are sort of the statements that's listed on the Mind Tools test. So effectively, you would go through the test and tick off the statements that apply to you. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just take a few minutes just to scan through these. Then I'm just going to come out of this and try to see if I can get in it. Oh, I'm going to show you a poll everywhere site. So if you go to this site here, what I would like you to do, and apologies for me flipping back and forth, just reflect on these statements. And choose the top 3 statements that most, represent you, that relates to you most often. So again, this isn't an exact science, it's just an opportunity for us just to have a play with it. So have a view of the statements, choose the top 3 statements that describe you most often, and then if you go to this poll site, just put in your responses. I'll see if I can come out and type the link in. It might make it easier for you to get it in. Oops. So I'm just going to pop the link in here. Come back out. And so again, these are the statements. So again, just read these statements. And what are the top 3 statements that most often describe you? And you might just want to pull out key terms, because what it's going to do is show up as a word cloud. So I'll leave it here for another few minutes so that you can read the statement, and then I'll shift over to the word cloud. Just see how this goes. Oh, doesn't work. Sorry. Let me come out. Sorry. It would help if I activate it. There you go. Try that again, please. Yeah, I've just activated. Apologies for that. Give it a go again. Great. Right. It's quite interesting. So emotions, conflict. Interesting. Avoid conflict and emotions come up. Good listener. Those are all positives. Negotiation. Nice. Okay. So it's interesting just to reflect on how those attributes would impact, your relationship with your colleagues. There was some nice positive terms that came up in there about sort of negotiation, um, and good. So again, just thinking about how, you manifest most often and what those impacts can look like, and in terms how it would manifest in your behavior, and how, as a result, that impacts your relationship. So if we reflect on the opinion of the consultant I mentioned earlier in the management article that argued that emotional intelligence is really for managers, not leaders, which of the statements do you think would not apply to a leader? And again, I can't really see, so maybe Rosie, if people were to put in the chat, if there are any statements that they feel would not apply to a leader, just put it in the chat. Maybe Rosie, you can just read it out to us. If I'd just be interested in your thoughts on that.
We've got lose temper
Mm-hmm.
from Jane. Struggle to build rapport with others.
Yeah. So I mean, and again, just flipping it on the positive, you would expect that leaders would be able to do all of that. So again, the leaders would have to consider, how these attributes would impact their relationship with their teams and how well people follow them or lead, how well they're able to lead people based on their relationships with them. Okay. But again, for me, it's all about it's all about people, really, this relationship management. Whether you're working alongside them or for someone or leading a team, it really is all about people. And I think any leader would assess these attributes and determine how that would impact their relationships and their ability to lead their team. And again, when you take the Mind Tools assessment, and again, it's freely available on their site, they'll give you an interpretation of the score. And again, 35 to 55 shows that you're doing well. Anything lower, you might want to consider whether you want to do some work. Anything more, fantastic, you're a goddess. So if I were to reflect on examples of emotionally intelligent leaders, I would name these two people. I don't know either of them personally, but based on how they come across in interviews. So Oprah Winfrey of Harpo Productions has built a successful empire through gaining the trust of people by making them feel heard and understood, sharing parts of herself and landing prominent interviews and lucrative partnerships just because people want to work with her. Richard Branson has also developed lucrative partnerships, spun up businesses, and often comes across as being authentic, particularly when he talks about being honest about being dyslexic, arguing that is simply a different way of thinking, and certainly advocating for those people who are dyslexic and who have been made to feel undervalued in their work and lives. And I knew we had a family friend who worked for Virgin years ago and recalled that whenever Richard was on a flight, he would often invite them out for drinks or dinner and just talk to them about what they thought about the job, how they liked it, what they do differently. So quite positive. You'll have less high profile examples, the partner, the colleague, the manager or leader who saw or heard you. And don't forget that trusted voice who can support you in your self-awareness. Now, Oprah always talks about her best friend, Gayle King, whose opinion she clearly trusts. So whose opinion do you trust? And as a leader, I encourage my teams to challenge my thinking, as that's the best way to find innovation in our services. The worst thing that can happen is that I take a different approach than someone may have recommended, but at least I thank the staff members for their recommendation and endeavor to explain the final decision. So how would you describe, who would you describe as an emotionally intelligent leader? So that's one that's worth sort of thinking about or reflecting on. Remember this report. And you didn't think I'd finish without referencing this report, did you? Particularly as we have a lot of work to do as a sector. Now, I recall that when this report was first published, there was some that said that the findings were unsurprising and others who were really surprised, particularly as librarians are such lovely people, and we are. But this is key finding number 11 from the qualitative research, and I'm going to read it out. Whilst workplace racism was not viewed as rampant, it did exist. Some at the hands of service users, for example, students, and some at the hands of staff. The experience of racism at the hands of staff centered primarily on the issue of inappropriate language and ignorance of cultural issues and fell within the realm of racial microaggression. So, where was our emotional intelligence and social intelligence as peers, managers, and leaders in our libraries? What role did we play in fostering, overlooking, or even contributing to these actions, thus enabling environments where staff members were made to feel the way my mates in Mayfair made me feel? Empathy, understanding how others feel. Josh talked a bit about this yesterday in his presentation, where we got to understand how he was made to feel. Staff have told us in this report how they feel. Self-awareness. Be clear whether and how you may be contributing to this environment. Self-management. Perhaps you kind of agree that there's just too much emphasis on this one marginalized group when others require attention. But how do you handle it? Shut down the conversation, agree to disagree, or articulate that you have other recommendations. Leaders, our staff members are watching us, picking up the signals about the type of environment that we're operating in. Who belongs? Who should be followed or monitored, as noted in the Skolnick report? And who wouldn't we like to see hanging around the shop too long? Knowing yourself, relationship management from the inside out. So this is, as we're all members of the Skolnick community and have a stake in ensuring that we foster the positive relationships amongst all our staff members. Again, taking the language from positive psychology about creating environments where people thrive rather than survive and are celebrated and not tolerated. Let's do a pulse check of where we are with addressing our 6 key areas of focus. 2 years on, pandemic considered. But there are a few highlights there. Leadership. Now, there are now 3 Black and Asian directors to my knowledge, so that's an improvement of 2 from when I was appointed in May 2018. The SCONAL board has piloted an advanced HE training program for leaders on leading change in race equality, and this will be rolled out to the wider membership. And some directors have also created support groups to hold one another to account for taking action in this space. And we're also working towards capturing statistical data about the demographics of our teams so that we can baseline and benchmark any change. Voice. The SCONAL BAME Forum, again, I recognize it's a contentious term, but the SCONAL BAME Forum has been created to enable our Black, Asian, and minoritized staff members to network, but also on alternate sessions for their allies to join the session. So our first Allies Forum will take place next week on Tuesday the 14th between 1 and 3 p.m. So you can register from the SCONAL site. Zero tolerance. Now, this is around understanding how we deal with issues and complaints within our organizations, looking at our policies and procedures, and I think we still have quite a lot of work to do there. Cultural and behavioral change. Well, some of what we're discussing today should help us all to reflect on how we're contributing to the work environments and how relationships are managed. And again, some of the presentations yesterday would also address this. A number of services are embarking on the Race Equality Charter as a tool for understanding the blockers to progression of marginalized students and staff and what to do about it. Active support for BAME staff. Again, some services are taking positive action, and I think we heard a bit about that yesterday for recruitment to roles. Others are using blind shortlisting to mitigate bias. Thanks, Josh. The SCONAL mentoring program is available to senior leaders, and we're looking to regional group like yours to support staff who are early in their careers. We should all be in enabling opportunities for information exchanges and job shadowing for exposing underrepresented groups to roles and career paths. And of course, sponsorship. Advocating for developing talent when they're not in the room. And we'll discuss this more again at the Allies Forum next week. And effective partnerships. Now, we are working cross-professional societies like RLUK and SILUP, and with regional, national, and international groups to help underrepresented groups progress into leadership roles. So some real green shoots here, but some more work to be done. So, emotional intelligence, relationship management from the inside out. Or is it a form of corporate control, which ultimately reinforces the status quo? I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. Yet again, you've given me opportunity to pause and reflect on my own practice. And we have got time for questions. So either questions, we'll take the hands up first, but please write them in the chat if you want to as well. I'll just give people time to put their hands up. I've got a starter for 10. So, Regina, I was considering what you were saying there and loving some of the tools and techniques that you're using with your own team. And I think we've had similar conversations in the past, but I just wondered if you could touch on, I suppose, your leaders above you and how kind of, I suppose, how you're influencing them thinking in this space. And I suppose being emotionally intelligent leaders, and how successful is that?
Well, it's interesting because, again, the 360 appraisal that I've spoken to you about comes from a leadership program that has been set up by the Vice Chancellor. And emotional intelligence is one of the competencies that we, sort of need to address. And as a result of this leadership program, and again, it was all the University Executive Board and University Management Board all participated in this leadership program. We all did the 360 appraisal, got feedback from all across, and I have to say though, Rosie, this was like my third 360 appraisal in like 6 years. It seems like every job I've had for the last number of years I've had them, but I really enjoyed getting them. And emotional intelligence is one of those areas that our career coaches gets us to talk about. Now, how well, whether or not we see it manifest everywhere, probably not, but that's, again, that's when you go on to your social intelligence, when you start to read the signals from other people, and then you use your emotional intelligence. It's about a bit of flexing to as you would need to do, work out how you will be heard. And some people will be better at it than others. Some people don't subscribe to it. As I said, some people just do not believe in the 360. They think is creating cookie cutter leaders. I sort of respect that, because again, we do want variety. But I can't say that I influence my sort of executive leaders, but they should all be striving toward it, because it's a program that they endorsed and they are involved in. So they should be doing the work themselves. But it's going to be down to me, in order to influence outcomes, to use my emotional intelligence and social intelligence to flex to try to get my work done.
Thanks, Regina. There's a question in the chat from Alison that says, well, first of all, says how wonderful the presentation was, but
Thank you.
She was wondering how you introduced this work to your team.
Well, we had as a strategic priority that we wanted to do some work around, team culture, especially since we've been out of the office for a year, and then been in it, in and out, but it would be a completely different dynamic coming back. And we were also aware that there were some previous issues that between staff members, where staff members didn't feel that some staff members were as tolerant with one another as they were with students. So we knew that there were some issues within our team that we had to deal with. So we put in our strategic priorities that we need to go back and think about our work culture, and how it impacts our customer care, because it is all about managing relationships. And so that was the way that we led into it. So it's about customer care, but pointing out that relationship management is about people, and how you relate to one another will also impact how you deliver services to your team. So that was kind of the way in. And then the positive psychology approach, again, the staff members seemed to really engage with it. And then it could have been because of that we were in a pandemic and people were kind of sort of sometimes feeling isolated. And it probably just came at a good time where people wanted to take the time to be self-reflective. So I think there were a number of things that helped the program along. And I didn't know how they were going to take it, but they really engaged with it. And Peter, I think, is quite good, because he's quite firm in his approach. He looks at things through that positive psychology lens. And when you start veering off into all of the negativity and get bogged down, he pulled you back, and the staff members really seemed to like that. So I think there were a number of ways that helped me to bring this in. Now we'll see in a year's time, when perhaps things start to shift back to some level of normalcy, shall we say, whether or not people still engage and still feel as self-reflective. But I'm hoping that we can keep this.
Thank you very much, Regina. And I think we've got perfect timing now for closing the session, but I'm really looking forward to hearing what's happened in a year's time. And I know there's a number of my team that are on this presentation today, so I think we're going to have a bit of a conflab to think about how we can adopt some of these practices. So Regina, I knew it would be wonderful. I knew it would be inspiring. I think you need to look at the chat at the end of this presentation, and I expect Twitter's also gone mad for this session. So thank you very much for sparing your time today, and we really do appreciate it. For everybody else, just to remind you all that next are parallel sessions at 10:30. So we've been giving you the luxury of a 10-minute break. Apart from if you are presenting, don't forget to turn up 10 minutes early for your session. So there's no break for you at all. And if you are wondering how to access those parallel sessions, if you go to the timetable, which is channel 1 in the Teams link, you can go to the session links there. But I shall see you all later. I feel really energised and inspired, so I can't wait to see some of these sessions that are going on today. Thank you very much, everyone.